6:30 a.m. It's Tuesday morning in Palangkaraya, Indonesia. The haze on the school run is not from traffic. It's the smoke from fires burning day after day. At times, visibility is cut to just 20 meters. Every minute in Indonesia, 4 football fields worth of forest is razed to the ground. In the peatlands of Borneo, it doesn't stop there. Carbon-rich peat fuels fire underground as well. Carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are released into the atmosphere, causing changes in the climate. Earth Report travels to Borneo's central Kalimantan to investigate the fallout from the fires and the scale of the disaster. Borneo is in the center of a cluster of islands that make up Indonesia. Suwido Limin lives in the thick of it, in central Kalimantan. Suwido is an agronomist, an expert in peat forests. At 54, he's still hard-driven, single-minded. For the past 16 years, he's been running research projects, collecting data to support peat forest conservation. His work is internationally renowned. The Indonesian government granted him land to conduct his studies. But his research areas, his outdoor laboratories, are threatened by fires.
Only 2 days ago, this area still green.
Oh, very hot.
But today you can see all trees gone and also peat layer burned.
The ground is treacherous. On peatland, underground fires penetrate as much as 60 centimeters beneath the surface.
Peat loss by this fire more than 20 centimeters.
On healthy, moist peatland, fire would only burn the top few centimeters. But dried out, the peat smoulders for months on end, sometimes reigniting surface fires.
This look like no fire, but if we plow like this,
Indonesia's peatland covers almost 23 million hectares. Already, almost 4 million hectares of this have been completely destroyed, and a further 12 million hectares are in need of restoration.
this is peat. This material come from wood or vegetation. More than 50% from this carbon organic. If this burn, will be release CO2 to the atmosphere.
Here, the peat is 9 meters deep. Elsewhere, it can reach down to 20 meters. There's a lot more peat to burn. Across Southeast Asia, peat swamp forest is being logged and converted to oil palm, pulpwood tree, and other crop plantations. Destroying peat swamp forest releases up to 10 times more carbon dioxide than other kinds of forest. Fighting fires in Borneo is tough. Even with international grants and donations, Suwido's organization, Simtrop, can afford to pay only 30 firefighters to protect his research sites.
Sometimes we were becoming wet, and then sometimes smoke coming. This is very hot.
Hundreds of canals have been cut through central Kalimantan's peatland to help logging and farming. Once drained by the canals, the peat decomposes and dries out, becoming more flammable.
Under ground fire, more difficult to stop because here ember, not flame. Underground should be saturated. We need much water just in this area. You can see many. Maybe this 1 second, 3 liters. 1 second, 3 liters.
Suido's team will typically work 24-hour shifts on the research site, sometimes battling roaring flames, more often a more insidious smoulder. Many of the trees now burning were planted by the team in 2002.
This is our site.
Suido has two main research sites. Half of this site has already burned down.
Strong wind. Make a fire everywhere.
News has come in that the fire is now seriously threatening headquarters.
Now if you would like to go using boat and then moving here like this, because all route along this broken. Not just here. Maybe all Central Kalimantan will be very bad.
With the track blocked by the fire, the advance party, setting out to save headquarters, is forced to use the canal. Meanwhile, back at base, Chris Yoyo was firefighting when he slipped through a hole into the burning peat. Despite the injury, he's determined to rejoin the team.
I want to make firefighting again. Of course, it's very, very dangerous. Really, really dangerous. I see so many fire in the forest, so many smoke in the sky also. That's not good, yeah. For the children, maybe like this. For everybody in the country, yeah, in the village also. So there is for myself. Maybe I want to save something better like that.
In Borneo, the problem started back in the mid-90s. Indonesia's autocratic President Suharto created the Mega Rice Project. He converted 1 million hectares of central Kalimantan's peatland forest to plant rice. 15,000 trans-migrants moved in. Workers dug 4,400 kilometers of drainage canals for irrigation. It didn't work. The canals opened up the land for logging, drained the peat of its moisture, and left it to decompose and dry up. The land was primed for burning.
Menurut pengetahuan saya, belum pernah yang seperti ini atau sebelum adanya PLG. Setelah adanya PLG, sering terjadi kebakaran-kebakaran yang seperti ini melanda kami. Semua kebun-kebun yang kami miliki yang serba sedikit, itu mungkin ludes hilang akibat dilahap api.
The Mega Rice Project went ahead despite advice to the contrary, including from Suido. It is considered one of the world's biggest environmental disasters.
The purpose of Mega Rice Project is produce rice. In reality, just produce haze.
Indeed, by 1997, a massive 650 fires blazed, most deliberately lit by plantation companies. The haze extended over Malaysia, Brunei, and Singapore. A quarter of Southeast Asia's peat forest was lost. But many of the recent fires have been set by locals on their own land.
Menurut aku video lo keren anak malan kan paksai mama nusola dia anak kita usaha nulo are.
Setting fires is an old technique to prime the land for farming.
Karena kalau nggak dibakar, tanahnya asam itu nggak bisa hidup, Pak. Bolehnya walaupun dikapur, dikasih tanah, kah, nggak ada hasilnya. Jadi abu itu untuk memancing akar itu.
But with an increasing population, there is more and more demand for space.
There's a lot more immigrants that have come into the forest, and they need a place to grow their rice. So they cut down the trees and they plant the rice. And the next year they cut down another patch. And this goes on in a cycle.
There are other reasons for setting fires. Ironically, it's a way to protect land. Under Indonesian law, domestic land unused for 3 years can be confiscated by the government. Setting fire to it is an easy way to prove ownership. But for Suido, fire is the enemy. En route to his second research area, he hears that the team of firefighters sent to protect the first site's headquarters was overwhelmed.
Last night, I know from my people who working in the night, all of our base camp burned.
Suido lost 3 buildings to the fire. Now he's concerned for the security of his second research site. This site used to be owned by a logging company that built a railway into the forest. 11 years ago, Suido took it over for his natural laboratory for peat swamp forest. It's 50,000 hectares of land along the Sabanga River. Although selectively logged, this is virgin peatland forest, home to many species, including the orangutan and tropical flowers that look like necklaces.
Sometimes we got orchid around here.
This area was earmarked for development under the Mega Rice project, but plans were scrapped before canals could be dug and the peat drained.
This is not so dry. You can see this peat in the surface still wet. Although no water, but still wet. Humidity is high.
But Suido hasn't become complacent. To protect the site, he hires a team to patrol its borders. Young men are all from a local village. They defend the natural lab from illegal logging and fires.
Sangat suka karena ini pekerjaan laki-laki menantang bahaya.
The land just over the river from the laboratory's borders is burning. Real men need to dive into action. Here, at least, is a fight that Suido can win. But in the big picture, the battle for land continues. Suido is a Dayak, indigenous to Borneo. The forest is literally his spiritual home. It's where his ancestors live.
And we believe we give them also they like smoke, cigarette.
But what is sacrosanct to him is not necessarily safe from development, and that could create problems in the future.
In our culture, we have land right around our village. All given by the government to the company, palm oil company, plantation and so on like that. If this area should be taken over by government and by company, will be rise a conflict for next future.
According to McKinsey, a consultancy, the present rate of deforestation will mean Indonesia losing over 1 million hectares of forest a year through to 2030.
We believe next future, outside this natural beauty, will be destroyed by legal or illegal activity.
After the United States and China, carbon emissions from peatland drainage and fires help make Indonesia the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. The question is, just how widespread is the problem of deforestation and peat degradation in Indonesia? Alu Dahong, a native of Borneo, agreed to take us back to his old workplace in the isolated backwaters of the Mantangai River. But reports from his old colleagues have been troubling.
I heard that fires now mushrooming surrounding the base camp and also along the river banks, so that's why quite risky to have this trip.
Alu had set up a forest restoration project for Wetlands International. He left when the money all but ran out. He's been looking for funds to restart it, and his prospects are good.
I hope to see that damming system are still successful and also the planting activity is still very good condition and fire is getting decreased.
Even in the time that he's been away, the land has changed. Upriver, Alu notices there are fewer timber mills operating.
Mostly already closed down because law enforcement from the government is quite tight for the last 2 years. And also becoming hardly for them to get the big logs anymore. Mostly, actually, they got it from illegally sources.
Government and private patrols have had some success against illegal loggers here. But according to the World Resources Institute, more than 60% of Indonesia's logging is illegal. For some, it's still a necessary source of income. Upriver, Adi is waiting to take Alu on the next stage of his journey. In the wet season, Adi sometimes supports his family by planting seedlings for Alu's old forest restoration program. But it's not enough to get by.
Bahalap mbak menanam pang, abi kan kuiwan deh lulik lasal mau mbak arep nanam, mon neveng kau lepah anu kayu kau, melaok i sumber gawi kan ide, ambil mengayuk, gesek jual, akan bangun tengah bangunan, abi jatuh gawi nah, paksa.
Indonesia's authorized conversion of forest to plantation continues. 40 years ago, the Indonesian government classified certain areas for development, and today they are still granting concessions.
The country has made the decision, in the sake of economic development, to convert a lot of its forests to other uses, oil palm or rubber or whatever else. So huge areas, numbering in the millions of hectares, are still slated for conversion ultimately. So I don't see that the rate of deforestation is going to slow down anytime soon.
But what would be the impact on climate change? The Indonesian government says it plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 26% by 2020. With help from developed countries, they would go further, up to 41%. The cuts, it says, would come through a combination of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and reducing deforestation. A new scheme named RED may provide these funds to reduce deforestation. RED, or Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation in Developing Countries, could be part of an international agreement in Copenhagen to reduce greenhouse gases. It would replace the Kyoto Protocol when it expires in 2012. Richer countries would pay poorer to keep their forests and the carbon they store standing. Alu pushes on through the narrowing river to base camp. The further he travels, the more depressed he becomes.
Yeah, I'm quite sad because fire happened everywhere. So this is a really worse situation compared to the last 3 years. Abangnya membelum apa itu sebetulnya?
Jadi kita wah, kalau jadi kani mawi kare kayu kani. Iki harian boleh 5 buka.
Narai lauk jadi nu mampi kamu?
Ke sapi itu?
Gatang.
Gatang lagi duit.
And sampai tangkapan tu are bar biasa atau malah berkurang?
Kurang.
Abi kira-kira abi
sehat tuh.
Abi sehat. Oh ya. This is a really disaster to me, you know. It's hard to see any wildlife here, you know, because this also impact of this disaster of fires.
But of course, forests are worth many other things than just storing carbon. They provide ecosystem services such as water regulation, and importantly, they provide livelihood opportunities for local communities. They also provide a harbor for some of the world's richest biological diversity, not only the charismatic wildlife such as the great apes, but all the way through down to soil microbes that are important to ecological processes.
As peat burns, it subsides. In this dry season, the water levels are low. But if peat subsides more, in future rainy seasons, locals could be at serious risk from flooding. As Alu gets closer and closer to his old project site, the state of the river banks makes him more and more anxious. Finally, he reaches base camp.
Oh my God, I can't believe this could happen. This is a really disaster. Used to be very nice forest, start to recover and now destroyed because of this fire. Really terrible.
We don't really have the science to know what it's going to take to restore those ecosystems once they have been subjected to drainage, to burning, to fertilization, to know, just how long it's going to take to restore the biodiversity, for example, of ecosystems that are thousands of years old.
But not all is lost. As Alou checks further, he discovers that the trees around the dams built to raise the peat's water table are still standing.
Seems very nice. Before we constructed this dam, all this area was a very degraded area. Even it's hardly to see any single trees on this kind of land. But when we already done this damming activities, and you see all start to growing well, start to green again, and the water level is still there even during the dry season like current situation, and you see a lot of birds singing around. Used to be this location was nothing, even no single trees, and all degraded peat. But after we have done this kind of restoration and replanting activities, everything turned to green and recover.
Just behind base camp are Alou's seedling sheds. They too escaped the fire, but Alou will need to find further funding to replant the land that's just been burned. Alou's team, with the help of local people, built 24 dams here. To restore their whole 49,000-hectare block, they will need to build a further 316. But it's a massive task, and even if successful, it will restore just 0.5% of the peat swamp damaged by the mega rice project. If it goes ahead, the RED proposal could bring as much as $3 billion into Indonesia. It would support projects preventing forest loss, like Alou's and Suwido's. In May, Indonesia became the first nation to issue a legal framework for RED.
It's clear that senior leaders in Indonesia realize how significant Indonesia is in the global forests and climates debate. A local commentator recently said that Indonesia has the chance to be a forestry superpower, and I think that's right.
People don't realize that actually they burn peat also mean burn money. If we can create this peat protection in the international carbon market, maybe they can change their mind in the future.
There are new models that show the danger of getting into a vicious cycle where global warming leads to longer and hotter dry seasons, which lead to more forest fires, which lead to more emissions, which leads to more global warming until forests have lost their ability to sequester carbon. So if we want to keep the option of using forests as a carbon mitigation strategy, we have to start now.
By continuing this kind of restoration and replanting of degraded peat, I'm sure that we're going to have more positive impact.